So it looks like the United States is about to expand military operations against the cartels, and not just those moving through the Caribbean and international waters like we saw in this strike a few days ago, but those inside of Venezuela as well. In fact, President Trump was just asked this question a few minutes ago on the White House lawn. Do you plan to carry out strikes against the cartels in Venezuela? And he said, you'll have to wait and see. Here you go.
Are you considering attacking the cartels inside of Venezuela? You attack?
What you're going to find out. You're going to find out.
Now, personally, I think there's probably an 80% chance we see an increase in strikes in the near future. But to be fair, nobody knows. I mean, the president just told Congress on Friday that he cannot tell them the extent of ongoing operations or how long these are going to go. And our own intel committees haven't been briefed at all. Now, it's not just me thinking this. There's a lot of folks with a lot more experience in this space that feel the same way. We have Jennifer Griffin, the Fox News Pentagon correspondent, who's been in that role since like 2006 or 2007. So she's seen a lot of military buildups and the intelligence prep and the eventual military strikes all around the world. And she said, in response to the announcement that the U.S. was deploying 10 F-35 stealth fighters to Puerto Rico to assist in this operation, quote, "Why would you need F-35 stealth fighters for a counter-narcotics mission? The F-35s being sent to Puerto Rico are usually used for large bombing missions like the targeting of Iran's nuclear facilities. Fifth-generation supersonic fighter jets known for its lethality. It looks to me like the U.S. military is going to war. 8 U.S. Navy destroyers in the Caribbean near Venezuela is a first." Now, something we've reported on in previous videos is kind of the change in how this is being presented. Right out the gate, it was a clear counter-narcotics operation with the U.S. Navy assisting the Coast Guard and what the Coast Guard would traditionally view as like a police action closer to U.S. borders. That very quickly transitioned into a counter-terror mission as we saw the designation of Tren de Aragua as a foreign terror organization. That then led to the use of lethal military strikes a couple days ago off the coast of Venezuela. Now, CNN is reporting that matches up with some of these statements we've heard recently. Quote, "President Trump is weighing a multitude of options for carrying out military strikes against drug cartels operating in Venezuela, including potentially hitting targets inside of the country as part of a broader strategy aimed at weakening leader Nicolas Maduro, according to multiple sources briefed on the administration's plans. Multiple sources told CNN Tuesday's strike was just the beginning of a much larger effort to rid the region of narcotics trafficking and potentially dislodge Maduro from power." And this is important because you're going to hear a couple different takes today. I'm going to do my best to play a couple clips of people in favor of this, arguing why it should happen and why it needs to continue, and others pushing back. And a theme here that I want you to notice is there's not a clear mission set. We're hearing a bunch of different things. It's counter-narcotics, it's counter-terror, and or regime change. And the reason that I think this is important to dig into, and personally I don't think it's getting nearly the attention on the national stage that it should, is because we have different stories across political lines, and I don't think that's good. Senator Warren here, the head of the Senate Intel Committee, I think summed this up really well in a very short clip, saying, hey, this is the kind of stuff when we're not agreeing on intel and making decisions kind of based off of keeping certain intel from one side or the other. That's the kind of stuff that gets us in trouble, specifically like the war in Iraq in 2003. Here's Senator Warren.
When you start making oversight and who gets shared information on a partisan basis, this kind of cooking the books in intelligence, how we got into the war in Iraq in the first place.
Now, I want to be clear that I'm not saying that is going to happen or it's not going to happen or this is the same or anything like that. It's just, let's keep that back in mind when we have mixed intelligence and it's not entirely clear how this is playing out. So I'm going to dig into a couple first-person sources that I want to play for you guys, and I'm really doing my best to not cherry pick what I think are going to be the best or make a certain argument or another. The challenge right now is that we have very few senior officials talking about this at all, and those that are going on the record and saying something publicly, they're all saying the same thing. So on the left side of the aisle, we tend to have Democratic lawmakers talking about how this is an illegal or possibly illegal use of lethal force, and Congress needs to be looped in before this goes any further. On the right, it tends to be people cheering this on, saying it's final, it's about time we started doing this, adding that there's more to come. Very different conversations, in my opinion, being had right now. But starting out right at the top, Vice President Vance put out a statement yesterday, again, to give you an idea of how this is being presented to the American people. He said, killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military. Response here from Brian Krasenstein, who's a left-leaning political commentator. He said, quote, "Killing the citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime," to which the vice president responded, quote, "I don't give a shit what you call it." And a lot of people picked up on that, but you can see it's kind of this, like a tough guy, right? Beat our chest. We're going to go out. We're going to get the bad guys. We're going to kill the bad guys. No questions asked. Moving on. And you see that as a theme on the right side of the aisle right now is people saying, finally, we're seeing some action taken against these cartels. Don't worry so much about the legal ramifications. In fact, we have a clip here in a moment of Jesse Waters on Fox News just plain making fun of people who are saying, are we sure this is even legal? But we did have one person that's continually in the middle here. This is Rand Paul. He's a Republican senator here in the United States, and he's been pretty consistent in his view of not liking the use of military force abroad. He's a libertarian, and he's kind of sticking with it here. He responded to Vice President Vance by saying, quote, "JD, I don't give a shit, Vance, says killing people he accuses of a crime is the highest and best use of our military. Did he ever read To Kill a Mockingbird? Did he ever wonder what might happen if the accused were immediately executed without trial or representation? What a despicable and thoughtless sentiment it is to glorify killing someone without a trial." And that does appear to be one of the angles I'm seeing play out right now, is the idea of asking for proof or evidence or a legal justification is weak and un-American. So this was a statement or some comments here made by Jesse Waters over on Fox News, where I think the best way to put this is his making fun of the idea of seeking legal justification for the killing of these people off the coast of Venezuela. Here's that clip.
Normal people don't talk like extrajudicial. You know who talks like that? Lawyers. They have to stop sounding like lawyers. You sound weak. You sound wily. Lawyers are unpopular, almost as unpopular as pollsters, Jessica. And when you contrast that with Trump, who's taking strong action, and you have a guy that's saying extrajudicial killing, it just makes you guys look pathetic and not normal.
Jessica, to Jesse's point, I mean, are Democrats falling for the latest trap, or aren't they just playing right into the hands of Republicans with Democrats now defending drug lords?
So that's where we're seeing a lot of this come down right now, is the idea that if you push back on this strike or ask questions, or not only, there's really three lines of argumentation that I'm seeing right now. There's the justification, the legality, and the effectiveness. So is it justified? Look, these cartels and the drugs they're bringing to the United States have killed a lot of Americans. So I'm in the camp of, yeah, they're bad people. It would be justified to go after them, no doubt. And I think a lot of Americans feel that way. The effectiveness, yet to be seen. That's a case that Secretary Rubio has made recently, saying, hey, look, when we just arrest these guys, nothing really changes. We've been doing that for a long time. They're continuing to arrest people right now. We're not seeing any real change. So, yes, the destruction of that boat, the killing of those alleged traffickers, is definitely more effective in the short term than just arresting people. Will it be effective long term? We'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of people making those arguments in response to the legality argument. Do we have the legal justification to carry out this strike in international waters? That seems to be where we're kind of falling short as an American public right now. Two different conversations being had about the same thing, in my personal opinion. Now, I also mentioned there's a little bit of confusion here because we're hearing different desired end states. It really looks like in that last clip with Fox News, there's a lot of talk about this is the cartels. We're killing kingpins. We're killing drug traffickers. Well, separate from that is the government in Venezuela. And the United States has done, there are ties, of course, from the Venezuelan government to some of these cartels. We have attempted to further solidify those ties in recent months with some of the indictments against Maduro and his senior officials. So those ties are there, no doubt. But it's a far cry from striking a cartel boat in the Caribbean to the toppling of the Maduro regime in Caracas. And we seem to, again, when we're talking about where is this actually going, we're bouncing around a lot right now. And if we kind of half-ass regime change, I feel like that's not going to be a very good regime change. But this is Representative Brian Mast, a Republican House chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, asked that question. Are we looking for regime change? Is now the time? And I think he actually answers this pretty well, kind of tiptoeing around it as best he can. Here's Representative Mast.
Do you believe, Chairman, that it's time for a regime change? And what should the U.S. role be in potentially that happening?
I would look at that. I'd juxtapose it to Iran as well. People have been talking about that with Iran, right? So the United States preference might be that we would love to see somebody different there other than Maduro, just like we'd love to see somebody different there other than the Ayatollah in Iran. There is absolutely a bounty on Maduro because of the things that he and his regime have been doing to the United States of America, but we want to see these things done by policy from the grassroots, coming up from the people, taking a changed stance within their country like the people of Syria did to oust Bashar al-Assad, so that we don't have these decades-long civil wars that go on in these places. That is the preference and policy for us, that it happened from the grassroots.
So I think pretty good answer when you're talking about somebody like Maduro or the Ayatollah or Putin or Kim Jong-un, somebody that we clearly don't like is, we're not going to say we're trying to enact some sort of regime change, but if it happens, great. I think that's a pretty solid answer, pretty consistent American messaging for a long time. I don't know that right now I would list Syria as the example that we're shooting for when it comes to a new government. In a lot of ways, I mean, that did not happen fast. It was incredibly bloody, still is. So maybe the Syria example, not what we should use when talking about trying to get a dictator out. But shifting over to the other side here, we've got some Democrats pushing back on this. I want to start with Senator Tammy Duckworth. Her main argument here is kind of one of the more consistent ones we're seeing, saying this is just straight up illegal and it puts the American people and American sailors abroad at risk going forward. Here's Senator Duckworth.
But there was military action taken in America's backyard by the Trump administration. Vice President Vance says killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military. He was talking about a strike on a alleged drug boat off the coast of Venezuela. What do you make of that show of force?
It was an illegal move by the Trump administration. There's a thing called due process in this country, and that needed to have happened. And the fact that it happened in international waters actually opens Americans to a similar action by our adversaries. We were just talking about Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and getting together and showing a show of force against the United States. Well, there's nothing now to stop them from doing something like that against Americans in international waters, and it could be civilians, and they could say, you know what, those were drug boats, we're just going to go ahead and blow them out of the water. He's setting a precedence here that puts Americans in danger.
Now, personally, I think the senator took that example a little too far there. I get what she's saying, and there is something to be said here, no doubt, for kind of the movement away from international norms. But the reason that our adversaries around the world are not blowing up U.S. ships is not because we haven't done it yet. All right, so this is not going to be, you don't have Putin or Xi or anyone around the world saying, finally, the United States opened the door. Now we can just destroy those American boats and nobody's going to do anything about it. The reason they're not doing anything like that abroad is because of the power of the U.S. military. That said, again, I do think this is an erosion of norms that long-term would lead in a bad direction. Now, Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat who chairs the Senate Intel Committee, laid out his concerns as well. And I think this was a pretty good explanation of why we just need to have a better idea of what exactly is happening here.
The Maduro regime in Venezuela are bad guys, and we obviously need to do all we can to stop fentanyl. We have not been briefed on this. This was a DOD. It was not an Intel project. It was a DOD project. But my fear is there are still international laws of the sea about how the process of interdicting these kind of boats. There's supposed to be a firing of a warning shot. You're supposed to try to take it peacefully. My understanding, this boat, none of those procedures were followed. And I'm going to get the full brief this week. But what I'm worried about is if we put our sailors in harm's way by violating international law, unless there is the appropriate designations, could this come back and hurt those sailors? The sailors were doing their job.
Now, I like the way that Senator Warner went about that, starting out the conversation with, hey, look, Maduro bad, traffickers bad, cartels bad, got it. But is this actually the most effective way to do it? We don't know because we really don't know the details, and there could be negative long-term repercussions here in the United States. It is very easy to kill people from the U.S. military perspective. We're very good at it. We're very effective at it. We can do that part, no problem, and we've proven that for a long time. The issue is, does that action actually accomplish the goals, or does it have some unknown secondary or tertiary effect that makes all of this more difficult for us going forward? That's the kind of conversation we need to be having that I think Senator Warner is talking about here in briefing the Intel committees. Let's make sure that there's a coherent plan. Because as we've been playing in this video, the plan ranges everywhere from stopping fentanyl, which does not mostly come from Venezuela, but some drugs come from Venezuela, no doubt. Is it stopping fentanyl? Is it eliminating the cartels? Is it regime change? Is it all three? We need a coherent conversation. We need to understand exactly what it is we're getting into here. And to that end, Senator Warner, again, the chairman of the Senate Intel Committee, goes on to say, hey, we haven't been briefed at all, which means that there's very few people in the government, essentially only the executive and a couple of people around President Trump, that actually have any idea what this plan is that we're executing. Here's Senator Warner.
But as far as you know, this is fully a military operation. It is not using the intelligence assets of the...
We have not...
Because the administration says they know everyone who was on that boat.
Well,
they had great clarity and fidelity.
Data, but this, again, goes to the report. This kind of action should be briefed to the intelligence community. And I'm a member of what's called the Gang of Eight. Mm-hmm. Those are the folks that's supposed to get the absolute secret stuff the only the president gets. I've gotten no briefing.
No briefing on this?
No briefing on this.
Now, throughout the war on terror, and where this really started was the idea that the president might have to make rapid decisions, right? There's intel that pops up that bin Laden just happened to be at this compound in Abbottabad, and we've got a 16-hour window to carry out this attack. And if they went to Congress with this information, that sensitive intelligence might leak. So then you have these intel committees, the Gang of Eight, that are much more tightly controlled. They get very limited. They get incredible access that very few people inside of DC do to try to prevent that. But something like a 12, 16-hour window, I get the argument. You might not have time to go to Congress. This is different. Look, I hate it, but we've been fighting this drug war for a long, long time. I don't know that this one boat moving through the Caribbean was any more a threat than the ones that likely came before it that same day and the ones that, let's be honest, probably came after. Like, this is an ongoing problem. I don't know what the urgency was and that the urgency is still today to where this does not require some sort of conversation inside of our government, especially with, here, Senator Warner, the Gang of Eight, the people on the Senate Intel Committee. On top of that, CNN reported in this letter on Friday, I'll put this up on the screen here, they said Trump sent a letter to Speaker Johnson saying, quote, "It is not possible at this time to know the full scope and duration of military operations that will be necessary. United States forces remain postured to carry out further military operations." Again, this might all be great. It might all work out perfectly. It might not. We don't know. There's not a good reason from what I can tell why this needs to be happening in such a rapid manner that we cannot follow some policies and procedures to make sure that we go about this in the most effective manner. The last thing we want to do is get in over our head in some new conflict and in too deep, and we're causing problems. There's U.S. casualties maybe. It's hard to understand right now the urgency. I would say there has been a lack of urgency over the last decade plus, no doubt. I don't know that changed in the last 3 or 4 days, and it seems like, to me personally, we should be having a lot more conversation about what very well could be a new conflict the United States is entering into. But that's all we got for now. Again, for those interested in supporting the channel, we just stood up a Patreon program. Patrons get patron-only videos. We've got regular AMA, Q&A sessions. First one's coming up here in a couple days. And then, of course, ad-free, sponsor-free videos. The link to that patron program will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.